contemplating at ease bodhisattva, was cultivating or looking into the deepest wisdom, he or she saw the 5 skandhas were empty and crossed beyond all suffering and difficulty. So this is a term that's used for the bodhisattva, but it's also a term that's used to mean a kind of contemplation. And then you have in the tradition, Chinese use zhi guan, which means literally stopping and contemplating, and that's short, Chinese short for the Sanskrit, which is shamatha vipassana. So the zhi is a shamatha, vipassana is the guan. Okay, so in other words, what's being talked about here is not just simply, hey, take a look, what do you think? It means a spiritual exercise of bringing your consciousness, your eyes, your ears, your nose, and so forth, to bear on the reality of things around you. But it is still contemplative prajna. It's still a spiritual exercise, and it's something you do practice to enter and bring your state of mind and body into this focused concentration by first stopping, shamatha, which means calming, quieting. Part of the sitting practice is the calming and quieting of your body. And then you use some kind of meditative focus to bring your mind further into a calm of single-mindedness, ishin. That's the stopping or the quieting. Then from that, you can do the guan. And that's why it's different than just ordinary discursive looking at things or reading a book. You're actually using the stopping technique to bring and focus your consciousness like a laser beam so that it's not just all discursively going out, but has a penetrating power. And that's the guan. That's called, sometimes translated as insight meditation. Okay? But it means insight. It doesn't just mean sort of gazing at, but it means a penetrating insight, sometimes called intuitive recognition. But this is still early practice within what Han Shan's talking about. So Han Shan is now preparing us for the next thing, which we'll get to in the next class, which is the investigation of Chan. And Chan goes a step beyond shamatha vipassana. So that's why it said, if you can climb the 100-foot pole and at the top take one more step. Whoa. No, wait a minute. How can you climb a 100-foot pole and when you get to the top, take one more step? That's Chan. It's moving beyond even the contemplative prajna into Shirshan, real mark prajna. And so at that point, there is no meditation topic. The meditation topic that's used in stopping and contemplating, even that is let go of in Chan. And so last night we were working on this, and the metaphor that was used we were all struggling with, I give you a hint of where we're going, is you all know when you go visit somebody, you throw a brick at their door. Well, there's a Chinese expression, using a brick to knock on the door. And we were trying to find the American equivalent, and it's like knocking on the door. But then you knock with your knuckles. But apparently what this means is you throw a brick against the door, and then somebody comes to the door and opens it and you go through, but you don't keep carrying the brick with you. And so Han Shan was using this metaphor to say, in the same way you use a meditation topic that is the stopping technique to get to the door, but then you let go of even that when you go through, and that's Chan. Okay? Now I'm moving ahead a little bit, but I want to point out tonight, what he's doing is he's giving us contemplative prajna exercises, vipassana type exercises, where you are to use these in a contemplative manner. Now you can use them in a casual contemplative manner. You can just sort of take his ideas here and sort of look around and observe casually. Is it the case that all things are like dreams, illusions, bubbles, shadows, and so on and so forth? And you can do that kind of and it's somewhat analytical. Sometimes people say the vipassana part is analytical contemplation. You're really investigating it and looking at it clearly with a clear mind. You're not zoning out. See, with the shamatha, you can kind of get into a zone. Everything's cool. It's just real relaxed, real calm. But in both traditions that use this, they say, don't stop there. That's only the precursor or the precondition for now bringing your mind to bear. So you can't slip into that sort of dull, empty, calm tranquility. You need to use that as just as you use a magnifying glass to gather light, to bring it to a point to cut through. So the next part then is the vipassana, the insight that comes from the calming. So again, you can see this parallel by calming the emotions, calming the feelings, calming the thoughts, calming the busyness of our lives. We gather energy that normally just goes out. Now, when that energy gathers, it can become a force of insight. And that's what the insight then becomes, the contemplative insight. So when he's saying here, take a good look, see what they are, see them for what they are, see right through them. And he's giving us the contemplation. These all arise from one's own mind. These things that we take to be real, solid. And remember, the word was used last week was conditioned dharmas. Okay? And I don't know if you remember the passage that I read you from the Diamond or the Vajra Sutra. Anybody remember that? Nobody? Right. So, all conditioned dharmas are like dreams, illusions, bubbles, shadows, like dewdrops and lightning flash. Contemplate them thus. Again, Guan, contemplate them in this way. You're actively contemplating them. And then my teacher's commentary, which I thought over again is like, I just read it through and I thought, wow, this is really good. Because you always think of conditioned dharmas as this and this and this and, the passing of days. But he's saying starting up a business is a conditioned dharma. Oh, having a relationship is a conditioned dharma. The eyes, ears, nose, tongue, the sense objects, and the consciousness are all conditioned dharmas. Whoa. So he's talking about both inner conditioned dharmas and external conditioned dharmas. That's the word he used. All phenomena outside and all phenomena inside are very perceptual processes, are habituations and so forth. All of these are conditioned dharmas. Whoa. So that's right. See, they all come from one's mind. So the very framing of reality, we've been going through this, is in fact a conditioned dharma. So now what he's doing, and he's almost mirroring, sorry for the pun, I didn't mean to be, they are mirages, illusions, images in a mirror, or the moon's reflection in water. He is in fact mirroring the Vajra Sutra in telling us this. What he's giving us here is not so much truth for us, but giving us a sort of meditation topic. So he says, he's not saying, believe me, it's this way. He's saying, look. You look. I'm telling you to sort of investigate things. This is the Buddha's technique, by the way. The Buddha never says, you should believe this because I said so. Or however you want to render that. He merely says, often he says, consider this. Look at this. What do you think? He poses it in this way. Because in the third turning of the wheel when the Buddha spoke Dharma, the third turning was know for yourself. He says, here's what I have observed. Here's what I have done. I exhort you, the second turning, I exhort you to do this. But he says, know directly for yourself. That's the third turning. So here in this tradition, it doesn't matter if Han Shan says it or the Buddha says it, unless we ourselves take on the practice and try this out. It'll still be words on paper. It won't be in our hearts. And it won't be in our consciousness. So he's giving an example here of how to do that. Now, if we go to the next passage, then he says, here's how you can do it. Contemplate, Guan, all sounds as a wind whispering through the trees. All sounds. So all the sounds you hear are like wind blowing through the trees. They come, they go. Contemplate all that we experience, both internally and externally, as floating clouds drifting through the sky. Wow. Now that alone, if you actually did that, would make life a lot easier. Just that one. I mean, just take this. It's like, I don't care. I don't want to get enlightened. I want to be a Buddhist or anything. Give me something I can take home tonight. Contemplate all your experiences as floating clouds drifting through the sky. Whoa. The high points and the dumb points, they're all just floating clouds drifting through the sky. They come, they seem to be there, they vaporize, and they're gone. So why get too excited? You know? Why get all worried about December 21st? You know? By the way, I heard something really funny today. You know the country that is biggest into this? No. China. Yeah, I thought it was Russia. I heard, but today I heard the interviews from the BBC in China. China's got like 20% of the population's going bonkers over this. Now, you know what they're doing? What would you do? What are you doing for next Friday? Well, yeah, what are they doing? Well, yeah, you would think they'd buy all the food, but you think, well, wait a minute. Now, see, you think about this. You all know what I'm talking about? Those of you who don't know now are going to have your tranquility completely disturbed. Like King's going, wait a minute, I just came out of my contemplative samadhi. What are you talking about? The world's going to end next Friday. So, but you contemplated that as a passing cloud as well. I was reading, there's a quote, Dalai Lama saying, let's see, next day, next life. Which do you think will come first? Dreams, illusion, bubble, shadows. Oh, we're all sitting here, yeah. Like next Friday. Yeah, you know, you're here by next Friday, pretty good. A lot could happen between now and next Friday, but sorry, like take. So you would think if the end of the world is coming, how do you prepare? No, I was thinking about this at first, and I thought, this is really interesting. How would you prepare? You know, Ellen, what are you going to do 21st, next Friday? Stock up on oatmeal? I mean, you think about it. If it's indeed going to end, what good would it be to stock up on anything? Think about it. So you don't go to work? Yeah, that's cool. Huh? Get married? Oh, eat, drink, and be merry. Not get married. Oh, is that in addition to that or separate from that or what? Yeah, but you can only eat, drink, and be merry for so much. And then you get sick. So it's like you got to be careful. But whether the Chinese... Well, prepare for the next life. Well, what would that mean? Oh, surround yourself with terracotta warriors for the next life. That really helped that emperor, by the way. You see, it did him a lot of good. He's gone, but those damn terracotta warriors are still around. Yeah, cast an image of yourself in bronze. Yeah, so, but that's not what the Chinese are doing. They're buying candles. Not to pray? No, not to pray. Taiwan law. It's too late. It's already set. The 21st, it's going to stop. So your prayers are just useless. They're buying candles because they think, as this reasoning goes, that when the world ends, the sun will go out. And if there's no more sun, how can they see? So they're all buying candles because they want to continue their ordinary way of life without the sun. So the interviewer is saying this is the ultimate in Chinese superstition and pragmatism. So I guess somehow they feel if the sun's gone, everything else will go on as normal, but how will we get about? We need candles. And so that's what the big overbuying is right now, buying up candles. Now, it gets even more interesting, but China's really into this right now. And so the interviewer is interviewing a Chinese person, just an average, really good Chinese person, and she's saying, do you really believe this? And she says, nah. And she said, but all your relatives in the village are doing this. Why don't you tell them? She says, well, I wouldn't tell them I don't believe it. Well, you don't believe it, do you? No, well, why wouldn't you tell them? Well, what if I was wrong? And she said, then they'd all think badly of me. No. I mean, you try to wrap your mind around that. So, the end of the world came, and you told us it wasn't. We're not going to, I don't think that's going to be on your mind. We're thinking badly of you. Or we should have gotten those candles. So, anyhow, this is not contemplation, okay? This is something else. So, anyhow, move on. Contemplate all sounds. Contemplate that we experience floating clouds through the sky. They're illusory, transitory things, okay? This is still part of the contemplation. Still part of the contemplation. Now he takes it to the next step of the contemplation. This is, as my teacher was saying last week, the external dharmas are like dreams, illusions, floating clouds. Now he says, and our own minds are just like this description I gave you of the natural world. Just as the wind comes and goes, and water rains down and evaporates, and blows through the trees, and the clouds come and go, and the days come and go, and the seasons come and go. There's nothing, and the stars and the planets and the galaxies come and go. So too are our minds this way. The internal dharmas. All of our discursive thinking, emotional anxiety, all the seeds of our craving, desires, habituations, our stress, our inner impediments, these too are like these clouds. Empty, vain, insubstantial. So basically, he's now giving us a very complete inner and outer guan, contemplation, that we can use in a very specific and focused way, built upon the meditation practice of calming. So as you calm and as you sit still and you use your meditation topic or whatever you're using in recitation to bring your mind and whatnot, then you begin to re-look at, through that focus lens, the nature of things, both outside and inside. Now, the outside is fairly straightforward, and many poets and philosophers have done this, right? And I mentioned you can read Tolstoy, Shakespeare, Kierkegaard. They all are really exquisite writers about the nature of the impermanent, unsatisfactory, passing world of things, right? The best I always recommend is read Shakespeare's sonnets, okay? When I behold by hands fell time to face the rich proud cost about warm buried age, when I sometimes lofty towers see down raised, or brass eternal slave to mortal rage. He's talking about the absolute passing of everything. So that's one part. Yes? Mm-hmm. The phenomena comes before, the clouds, the water, the passing. Someone look and see why we came up with that. Right. The outside means outside phenomena, the outside natural world. That which is outside we call the natural world. Right? Trees, the rivers, the mountains. Okay. Where was I? So it's easy to do it on the externals. But when it comes to the internals, that we take as much more substantial and real, particularly our emotions, our feelings, our impediments, and so forth, our stresses. This is harder to disengage from, to detach from, because we see them as powerfully and real. And this is where he's saying the real work begins, because those two you have to be able to see through and put down. Okay? So, in this contemplation, we're still into contemplative prajna. We're not into the real mark prajna. We're not into Chan at this point. We're still preparing the ground for Chan. So part of the preparing the ground is putting down what's not true so we can be in a position to pick up what's true. My teacher would say, until you can put down what's false, you won't be able to pick up what's true. So this stopping contemplating, this contemplation here, is in a sense stripping away the more easy to work with impediments or chains that keep us from liberation. These things we can contemplate, we can look at directly. Now, bodhi, jirhui, this kind of wisdom or bodhi, that isn't something you just get at thinking about, even analytically, even necessarily through contemplative prajna. But the contemplative prajna is preparing the ground so that you can let go and release your hold. So when that mad mind stops, that very stopping is bodhi, is you're preparing the ground to let your mind go into that deep stopping. Sometimes it's called bodhi, nirvana. The still tranquility of nirvana means you've absolutely now passed beyond even contemplative prajna. You have become one with this realization. So there isn't any more entering or leaving. There isn't any more exercises of thinking about it and pulling away or entering samadhi and leaving samadhi. Remember the sixth patriarch says, Da San Mei, the big samadhi, has no entering and no leaving. So this is what my teacher, what Han Shan is teaching, is a kind of realization that is no longer dualistic. It's no longer I realize this. But you become one. It's totally unobstructed, totally one. Okay? Now, when he gets into it at a deep level, as we'll go on, not tonight, but he will say that the 10,000 things arise from this, this mind. Let me just give you a brief quote here, and this is from the sixth patriarch. So, ordinary people think that the heaps, the realms, the places, what are the heaps, the realms, the places? Those are the inner workings. These are these, what we call the six sense objects, the six sense organs and the consciousnesses. Ordinary people think these are two different things. The wise understand they are bu'ar, not two. Okay? And then and I'm quoting the sixth patriarch again, the Buddha Dharma is non-dual. The Dharma of the Buddhas is a non-dual Dharma. The non-dual nature is the Buddha nature. So this prajna, this is called real mark prajna, there isn't any distinction, there isn't any contemplation going on anymore. That duality is completely gone. Wow. So this is where Han Shan is going to be taking us into this methodology. But to get there, he's doing preliminary steps which have to do with contemplating, letting go, breaking through, and using our mind in an analytical and even intuitive way to the most we can to get to the launching point for then even letting that mind rest. Make sense? So, I will show you leading into tonight, because I wanted to do some zhuangzi tonight, but you'll see when you read things like zhuangzi or other text, you can see the exercise of contemplative prajna at work. So last week, what I tried to do with that, I think it was last week, do that film of 10 factors of 10, right? And we were talking about scope and perspective. Changing scope and perspective is the contemplative prajna. In other words, you shift your perspective in contemplative prajna to see it from another angle. And there's many exercises to do that. For example, Theravada or even Mahayana monks will contemplate a corpse. One of the practices is go to a cemetery and you contemplate the stages of decay of a human corpse. That's when we had cemeteries like that, where people were just put there on the charnel grounds, and then nature took its course. They weren't cremated and they weren't buried. You can do that in Berkeley, right? No, of course not. Go to Forest Lawn in LA. No way. It looks like a golf course. There's nothing to contemplate there except flowers. And even under the ground, there's nothing going on. They play music into the coffin, and you can have your choice of songs. No, I'm serious. You can have country, you can have rock, you can have easy listening. No, that's what they do. And so there's no sense that anything ever transpired here that would change. But the monks in the past, and sometimes now they go to morgues where autopsies are being performed to do the same thing. It's a contemplation to break through the attachment to the body as something real and permanent that's going to last forever. You can do this at home. No, I don't mean you do an autopsy at home. Do not try this at home. But you can just look at yourself. You can look at your photo album. There I am at 3. There I am at 10. There I am at 60. Whoa, what happened? You're contemplating. This is what prajna, contemplation prajna means. So these exercises you can do in ordinary ways like this, but there's writings that help us change scope and perspective, like the Powers of 10. I would consider that a contemplative exercise because wow, where am I in this macro-micro infinity? I was thinking of Blaise Pascal, said human beings are perched on a point between infinity of the macro, infinity of the micro. So in the 10 powers, you go down to the cells, to the atoms, and blah, 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 and all of a sudden, whoosh, just potential. And you go to the macro, which is out there with all those, as far as we know, what we think is all those now, all those galaxies, which, from another perspective might be dust on a peach. But we think of the galaxies. Again, our vision of the micro and macro is from but he's saying we're poised between these two, not knowing our true identity, between the micro infinite and the macro infinite. It's a really interesting but that's contemplative. It shifts your perspective, okay? And so anything that can be used in this way, and that's why I say modern science can be used as a contemplative device. A walk in the woods can be used. And in fact, in the past, those who are considered to be pratyeka Buddhas, those who are enlightened by conditions, observe, contemplate the conditions. They go into the deep woods or the mountains, and they watch the changing of the seasons. They watch a shooting star at night. They watch how things come and go and pass and so forth. And contemplating this deeper and deeper levels till they get to the 12 conditioned links, gain insight through this contemplation that's based on observation. So in some ways, it's a kind of spiritual science, if you want to use it that way. It's an impartial observation. The impartiality comes by calming, by detaching, by holding precepts so that you're not all scattered and off-center, and then from that point of calmness, observing directly as much as you can the true nature of things. Now, this can be very profound and powerful, and yet, from where Han Shan's coming, it's just the prerequisite. It's absolutely necessary, but it's not sufficient for full awakening for Buddha. And that's why you see, if you trace the Buddha's trajectory, he goes through various teachers that take him through deeper and deeper levels of contemplative prajna. But even at the highest stage, and often contemplative prajna sort of sits around the 4th dhyana, it doesn't go much beyond. He goes into the formless samadhis and still realizes that that isn't it yet. That as deep as that contemplative prajna takes him, there's still an entry, there's still a leaving. And so it's when he leaves that he has what we call Anyuttara Samyak Sambodhi, this profound awakening that is called Buddha. This is where Han Shan is going to eventually take us. So what I wanted to do tonight was to share a passage. Oh, okay. Let's start with that before we do Zhuangzi. Because Zhuangzi is a hard act to follow. Those of you who read Zhuangzi. So let's do these verses first. These are verses of impermanence that are coming from the tradition. The first one is from the Agamas. Anybody know what the Agamas are? Stacy, what are the Agamas? The what? The first what? Louder. If my teacher always said, if you're not sure of your answer, say it really loud. And if it's a mistake, shout it. So what's the Agamas? Do you know? You're close. This is one of the divisions of the canon, 12 divisions, the Agamas, and this is the closest correspondence we have between Mahayana and Theravada. Both have, and these are almost identical. So this is the Theravada canon in the Mahayana canon, the Agamas. And this verse is the most common one. So whatever is phenomenal, that's a translation of conditioned dharma. So it says, oh, that's phenomenal is used as the English to mean conditioned dharma. Whatever is phenomenal is impermanent. Whatever is phenomenal is dukkha, translated often as suffering, but meaning unsatisfactory. And whatever is phenomenal is devoid of a self, not having a self-existing nature because it's completely reliant on other things. And then the fourth one is nirvana, is eternally tranquil. These are sometimes called the four marks or the four seals. Sometimes they have three, which are the first three. The Agamas? Well, the Agamas are very, very early. So they're going back to the earliest written texts out of the Buddhist tradition would be coming from the Agamas. We're talking around anywhere between, say, about 100 Common Era. Yeah, this goes back. And before that, it was part of the oral tradition. So it actually comes from the time of the Buddha, but it wasn't written down into this form until, somewhere about 100 to 200 years vaguely, around the Christian era, the beginning of the Christian era, or the Common Era. Okay? So, and one of the markers that you can use, it's given in another text to tell whether it's a genuine, authentic Buddhist teaching, because the question of whether the Buddha spoke it or not, even the Buddha himself said it doesn't have to be, I spoke it to be a Buddhist teaching. Whoa, okay. But that's what he said. But it has to have these elements in it. So a complete text will have elements of this. These impermanent, dukkha, no self, and then the tranquility, the release, the liberation, the perfection, that's nirvana. That makes up the markers of a complete text. Okay? So that's one way to look at that, and you can use this, and it's a contemplation verse. This is called the impermanence verse. And you use it as a contemplation. Whatever is phenomenal, inside and out, is impermanent. It comes and it goes. I can't hold on to it. It's unsatisfactory because it comes and it goes and can't be held on to, and doesn't lead to any permanent lasting state. When I get it, I'm happy. When it's gone, I'm sad. That's impermanence. And then finally, devoid of a self-existing nature. It is always dependent on something else. And then the teaser, nirvana, is the end of all this. It's the end of impermanence, the end of suffering, the end of woe. And if you just have the first three, it can lead you to a rather morbid state. Suffering, impermanent, no self. That sounds like a lot of fun. No, but then when that ends, then you have tranquility. Whoa, well, how do you end that? So it's an exhortation. So there's another version that's up there that I'll read to you, and this comes from the Japanese tradition, and it's an attempt to render that verse into a more poetic form. And so those of you who are more lyrically inclined will like this. And that one goes, colors are fragrant, but they fade away. Of course, we all know that. I just looked at my car, and it's already starting to fade away. The first layer of paint is peeling away, and the sun's bleaching out the rest, and my mechanic wants me to have it repainted. And I say, no, I'm a Buddhist. I want to contemplate. What? The fading of the colors. And then he said, what? I said, look at your skin. He said, well, those are the fading of my skin colors, the pigment's fading. Oh, you're going to have it repainted? Only in Berkeley can you talk to mechanics this way. The Midwest, you don't do this, okay? But colors can also be shy. Shy means, see, it's metaphor. We're not just talking about pigments here, okay? Oh, you mean there's more than pigments? Yeah. What does colors mean? Come on, poetically. Colors. Lotions. Rouge. Skin color. Beauty. Colors are fragrant, but they fade away. In this world of ours, no one lasts forever. Now, the exhortation, cross the deep mountains of conditioned things today. There will be no more shallow dreaming, no more intoxication. Nirvana. No more shallow dreaming, no more drunkenness. Whoa, nice way of putting it. Guanzhen zai pusa xingxiang bo bolo mi. Then what? Realize it's all empty, There's no knowing or attaining. And because there's nothing to attain, the bodhisattva is unimpeded in his or her mind and leaves upside-down dream thinking far behind ultimately nirvana. Whoa. Okay? So it doesn't end with nihilism. It says, hey, let it all down. Even let go of attaining something, and then you get it. Okay, so now let's look at Zhuangzi. And Zhuangzi is going to do it from another way, but he's poking at us. He's poking at us thinking that we are in the uncontemplative state, really see things as they are. So he's using, I guess it's allegorical when you use animals and things to portray human themes. Isn't that allegory? Like Animal Farm is an allegorical tale. Everybody know Animal Farm? It's not that game you play on the computers. That's different. Animal Farm is an actual work of literature by George Orwell. And there's a little movie that goes with it, and it's really not about animals and farms. It's not a Disney thing at all. It's about dictatorships and so on and so forth. Anthropomorphism is another way, or personification, where we take human sentiments and feelings and project them onto Aesop's tales or fables are another example, where animals represent human thoughts, feelings, and emotions, and it just makes the medicine go down a little easier. Look at that stupid little pig. Greedy, greedy, greedy. But that's a pig that's talking, but we don't do that. So it allows us to take a bitter medicine in a kind of fun way. All right? So here, where are we starting? In the northern? Okay, it's fun to read. Just let your, I got to find it in my book here. Is that where it starts, in the northern? Okay, and we go. Okay, let's just relax. I'm just going to read you a story. This is Zhuangzi. In the northern darkness, there's a fish, and his name is Kun. Yeah, Kun. He's so huge, I don't know how 1,000 miles he measures. They say li, it's a Chinese mile. He changes and becomes a bird whose name is Peng. Right, now it's a story. Right? It's big bird. And the back of Peng measures, I don't know how many thousands of miles across, and when he rises up and flies off, his wings are like clouds all over the sky. And when the sea begins to move, the bird sets off for the southern darkness, which is the lake of heaven. So this is like a story you read to kids. There's a big bird. He's so big, right? Stretch your mind. And he says the universal harmony records the various wonders, and it says, we're there? Okay. When the Peng journeys to the southern darkness, the waters are roiled for 3,000 miles. He beats the whirlwind and rises 90,000 miles, sending off a 6-month gale. Your minds now should be, no, not possible. This is what the Avatamsaka does, by the way, too. Wavering heat, bits of dust, living things blowing each about. The sky looks very blue. Is it its real color, or because it's so far away and has no end? Uh-oh, see? He's playing with you again. Is the sky blue because that's its real color? Oh, look, the blue sky. Or is it just a void with no end to it? Oops. Yeah, I look up at the sky and I feel so secure. Why would you feel secure looking up at the sky? It would make you feel like, whoa, so what I'm standing on is this little speck of dust completely floating in the void. That doesn't feel secure, especially when it shakes. When the bird looks down, all he sees is blue too, the depths of the ocean. If water is not piled up deep enough, it won't have enough strength to bear up a big boat. Pour a cup of water into a hollow in the floor, and bits of trash will sail on it like boats. You see what he's doing? He's playing with perspective here. What's the difference between the Queen Mary and a speck of dirt in your bathtub? He's pulling you around. But set a cup there and it will stick fast. For water is too shallow and the boat too large. If wind is not piled up deep enough, it won't have the strength to bear up great wings. Therefore, when the Pung raises 90,000 miles, he must have wind under him like that. Only then can he mount on the back of the wind, shoulder the blue sky, and nothing can hinder and block him. Only then can he set his eyes on the south. Now, you have to imagine that Lucas, has created this for you to see. And you're sitting in the theater, and all of a sudden you see this huge bird. And you see the Atlantic and Pacific like the water in your bathtub. What? Right? And as it rises up, okay? Now here comes the contrast. And the cicada, what's a cicada? A little cricket, a little insect. And the little dove, coo, coo. They laugh at this and they say, when we make an effort and fly up, we can get as far as the elm or the sapwood tree. But sometimes we don't make it and we just fall down on the ground. Now, how is anyone going to go 90,000 miles to the south? Unimaginable. If you go off to the green woods nearby, you can take along food for 3 meals and come back with your stomach as full as ever. But if you're going 100 li, you must grind your grain the night before. And if you're going 1,000 li, you must start getting provisions together before 3 months in advance. What do these creatures understand? Asked the author. Little understanding cannot come up to great understanding. The short-lived cannot come up to the long-lived. Do we have more? Yes? Okay. You're not bored? Okay. So how do I know this? Is so? Now he goes in, and now he's stretching you again. The morning mushroom knows nothing of twilight and dawn. There is a mushroom whose life cycle is to come in the morning, and by the late afternoon it's already lived its whole entire life. And there are bugs like this. There are bugs that come into existence, and they're born, they mate, they reproduce, and they die within 2 or 3 hours. Mayflies is another example. Whoa. So they're going, happy birthday. Oh! Okay. The summer cicada knows nothing of spring and autumn, so it just lives in the summer and then it's gone. So if you say to the cicada, by the way, autumn comes and the leaves turn color and they fall to the ground, it's going, what are you talking about? In my whole life, and in my grandfather's and my great-grandfather's life, nobody ever talked about this. It can't be. They're short-lived. South of Chu, there's a caterpillar that counts 500 years as one spring and 500 years as one autumn. Long, long ago, there was a great rose of Sharon that counted 8,000 years as one spring and 8,000 years as one autumn. They are long-lived. It's contrast. Is that where it stops? What's the next line? Oh, yeah, Pengzu alone is famous today for having lived a long time, and everybody tries to ape him. Isn't it pitiful? He's talking Methuselah. Okay, there we go. What does it say? Oh, okay. Well, this goes on. There's the little quail. Is that there? I'll read you that because I like the little quail. The little quail looks at this big bird. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. And he laughs at him saying, "Where does he think he's going? I give a great leap and fly up, but I never get more than 10 or 12 yards before I come down, fluttering among the weeds and the brambles. And that's the best kind of flying. Anyway, where does he think he's going?" And then Zhuangzi says, "Such is the difference between big and little." So, I'm leaving home to cultivate the way. What does he think he's doing? Everybody knows that life consists of settling down, getting married, having a job, and so forth. You're going to get enlightened? I never heard of anybody getting enlightened, right? This is how it works. So this last line I just quote to you, and this is his, goes on. Basically, he's talking about relativities here. And from a small mind, what is great seems impossible. And from a great mind, what is small seems absolutely silly. But they can't change their perspective to get into that. In the same way, the Buddha is saying, from our limited perspective within the skandhas, within our attachments, we only see a limited part of our full potential. And so the text, the contemplative exercises are to make us break out of that limitation, to stretch and challenge us. That's why this stuff is really good. So then he says, we can't expect a blind man to appreciate beautiful patterns, or a deaf man or person to listen to the bells and drums. Right? So he's saying, if the faculty doesn't work, you won't appreciate music. If the eyes don't see, you won't appreciate colors. Okay? If the tongue is dull, you won't know taste. But then he goes to the next level, and this is where the contemplation. And blindness and deafness are not confined to the body alone. The understanding has them too. So this is his passage. He's saying, just as you can understand this, it's a metaphorical allegory. Just as you can understand the small insect not being able to figure out the eagle, and you can understand how a bug that lives only a few days wouldn't know the seasons, and we can all understand that. Can we understand how our limited understanding cannot appreciate our full potential or the realm of a sage? And so it's both to pull our rug a little bit, but also to encourage us to change perspective, to change scope. So these, and my teacher would use many of these as contemplative exercises to loosen us up. I would say I use a WD-40, kind of squirt it here until you start to loosen up and let go of that narrow view. And when the letting go happens, it's not a suffocating feeling, but it's a liberating feeling. And then you ask, how far could I grow? How far could my consciousness expand? And the Avatamsaka says the whole teaching is about the understanding and expanding of the mind in all its states. The understanding and expanding of the mind in all its states. Wow. And that's what the sixth page here says. This mind is meant for greatness, for great things. Its function is to know all. Whoa. And then we're like the little cicada. No. You can only know a little bit, and you should be content with that. It's not possible to know all. I've tried it. And I fall asleep when I read the book. Okay, so we'll stop there. Tonight's our last class for the semester. This is the middle. And so we'll take our natural break, get back. When do classes start again, Ken?
3rd of January, Transcending, so that's Tuesday. The week after MLK.
So that would be, but towards the end of January? Yeah, so we'll have about a 5-week or plus break. Saturday night lectures will continue. Hung Sure and I are going to buckle down and do some translation work. And I might even go to Australia to continue it there. Although I just don't know about flying all that distance. I've never, how would you fly across that big body of water? Yeah, so in any event, I hope you all have a good break and continue to contemplate. And we'll see you towards the end of January. Any other announcements or?
There's an Amitabha session at the City of Contemplative starting the 23rd, I believe. For 1 week, yeah. And then the Chan for 3 weeks after that.
So everybody hear that? There's a winter Amitabha session of 1 or 2? 1?
I think it's 1 week.
1 week, and then a Chan of
3 weeks.
3 weeks.
At the City of 10,000 Buddhas. So.
That's a course if you make it past next Friday. See you all in the end of January, by the way. Candles or not.